On the early morning of December 1st, 1948, the coastline of Somerton Beach in South Australia was bathed in the warm light of the approaching summer. But this serene landscape was about to become the stage for one of the most perplexing mysteries of the 20th century. Two men riding their horses along the shore spotted a figure slumped against the seawall. The man appeared to be sleeping, his head resting against the cold stone, his legs extended and crossed at the ankles. However, as the morning progressed and the tide began to shift, it became chillingly clear that the man was not sleeping. He was dead. When the authorities arrived, they found a scene that defied logic. The man was impeccably dressed for a sweltering summer day, wearing a heavy suit, a tie, and polished shoes. Yet, when they searched his pockets for identification, they found absolutely nothing. No wallet, no cash, no driver's license. Even more bizarre, every single identifying label on his clothing had been meticulously and deliberately cut away with a sharp instrument. The initial examination of the body raised far more questions than it answered. The man was in peak physical condition, appearing to be in his mid-40s, with the broad shoulders of an athlete and the defined calf muscles of a professional dancer or a long-distance runner. There were no signs of physical trauma, no defensive wounds, and no indication of a struggle. The autopsy, however, revealed a terrifying internal landscape. His spleen was massively enlarged, and his liver was heavily congested with blood. His stomach contained pooling blood and the remnants of a pasty he had eaten hours before. The chief pathologist concluded that the man had been killed by a highly sophisticated, fast-acting poison. But here is the most terrifying part. Despite exhaustive testing, the toxicologist could not find a single trace of any known poison in his system. It was as if a phantom toxin had stopped his heart and then vanished without a chemical trace, leaving the authorities completely baffled. Weeks turned into months and the dead man remained a ghost. His fingerprints matched no records and his photograph, circulated nationwide, drew blanks. Then a major breakthrough occurred. A brown suitcase was discovered at the Adelaide railway station, checked into the cloakroom the day before the man's body was found. When the police opened it, they hoped to finally uncover his identity. Instead, they found another complicated layer of the puzzle. The suitcase contained neatly folded clothes, but just like the garments on his body, all the manufacturer tags and laundry marks had been systematically removed. They also found a stenciling brush, a modified knife, and a specific type of orange barber thread that was not sold anywhere in Australia, but precisely matched the thread used to repair the dead man's trousers. A few items bore the name Keane, but investigators quickly realized these were deliberately left behind as a decoy, leading them down a frustrating dead end. By April of 1949, the investigation had hit a brick wall. In a desperate attempt to find something, anything they might have missed, the police brought in an expert to re-examine the man's clothing. Deep inside the waistband of his trousers, the examiner found a tiny secret pocket, the exact kind used for holding a small fob watch. Inside this hidden compartment was a small piece of paper, rolled up so tightly it looked like a tiny pill. When carefully unrolled, the police saw two words printed in an intricate, distinct font, Tamam Shud. Experts in linguistics were immediately called in, and they identified the phrase as Persian. It translates to "it is ended" or "finished." The phrase was the final words of a famous 12th century book of poetry called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The police realized they were not just looking for a name anymore. They were looking for a specific, very rare edition of a book from which this tiny scrap had been torn. A massive public appeal was launched, asking citizens to check their libraries and vehicles for the mutilated book. Miraculously, in July, a local businessman walked into the police station with a copy of the Rubaiyat. He explained that he had found it tossed into the back seat of his unlocked car, parked near Somerton Beach, on the exact night the mysterious man had died. The police quickly matched the torn scrap from the dead man's pocket to the jagged missing piece on the last page of the book. It was a perfect fit, but the book held a much darker secret. Under ultraviolet light, investigators found faint pencil indentations on the back cover. It was a code, 5 lines of jumbled, seemingly random capital letters, with the second line heavily crossed out. Naval intelligence cryptographers and mathematical geniuses were brought in to break the cipher, but the code was utterly impenetrable. To this day, neither human minds nor supercomputers have definitively cracked it. Along with the Unbreakable code, The back of the book contained a local unlisted telephone number. The police traced this number to a young woman named Jessica Thompson, a nurse who lived a mere 400 meters from where the body was found. When detectives visited her, she was evasive, nervous, and highly defensive. They showed her a plaster cast made of the dead man's face. The detective present noted that upon seeing the face, Jessica looked completely terrified, to the point where she nearly fainted and had to look away. Yet she adamantly denied knowing the man. However, she did admit that during World War II, she had owned a copy of the Rubaiyat and had given it to an Australian Army lieutenant named Alf Boxall. The police immediately assumed the dead man was Boxall, but they soon found Boxall alive and well in Sydney. Even more bizarre, Boxall still had the copy of the Rubaiyat that Jessica had given him, and the final page was completely intact. The case of the Somerton man soon became entangled with the extreme paranoia of the Cold War, the untraceable poison, the meticulously removed labels, the secret pocket, the Unbreakable code, and the proximity to a top-secret rocket testing facility in the region all pointed heavily towards international espionage. Was the Somerton man a Soviet spy who had been eliminated using an advanced biological weapon? Was Jessica Thompson, the terrified nurse, a local informant or a handler? For decades, this spy theory dominated the narrative. The idea that a highly trained secret agent had met his end on a quiet Australian beach, leaving behind a cryptic final message, captured the imagination of the world. The phrase "tamam shud," meaning "it is ended," seemed like a poetic, tragic sign-off from a man who knew his time was finally up. For over 70 years, the Somerton man lay in an unmarked grave, his secret seemingly buried with him forever. But in recent years, advancements in forensic genealogy provided a new glimmer of hope. Researchers campaigned tirelessly to exhume the body and extract DNA from hairs preserved in the original plaster cast. In 2022, an astonishing breakthrough was announced to the world. Through complex DNA profiling and cross-referencing family trees, researchers finally gave the Somerton man a name: Carl Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne. But while we now have his name, the true mystery remains completely unsolved. Why did he travel to Adelaide? What was the meaning of the Unbreakable code on the back of the book? Who poisoned him? And why were all his labels removed? Even with a name, the ghost of Somerton Beach refuses to rest. The full truth of what happened on that warm December night is still shrouded in absolute darkness, proving that some secrets are meant to be kept forever.